The next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, is the NetApp's Chief Technology Officer, and he evaluates, of course, the biggest technological opportunities and risks there are for the business. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome him to the stage, Mark Bregman. Mark.
Thanks.
Good to see you.
Thanks. My button?
That's your button,
Okay,
and you have
my
15 minutes.
Okay, great. So good morning, welcome back. Did everyone have enough coffee? Yeah, I don't want you to fall asleep. Okay. So I'm really happy to be here. This is a big turnout. I mean, I'm really impressed at both the number of people and also the engagement and activity. So I'm really happy that there's this much going on around OpenStack. Let me talk a little bit about, I joined NetApp about a year ago, so let me tell you a little bit about my own journey within NetApp as I joined the company. I was in the storage industry for a while before. I was at Veritas as the CTO for many years. And frankly, about 10 years ago, we were sitting around at Veritas and we said to each other, gee, the storage business is kind of finished. What more is there to do? We've solved all the problems. And that's clearly not true. And the reason is there are at least 4 separate things that have impacted our industry. And they impact us directly, and they impact all of you as well. And those are the emergence of the cloud. 10 years ago, we didn't really think about the cloud. New storage technologies like flash storage, which allow us to architect different kind of systems for persistent data and different performance characteristics. 2 other very important factors are changing nature of data. You know, if you go back, I don't know, probably 20 years ago, or certainly 20 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, before the advent of big data, there was a very funny sort of circular logic in the storage industry, in the data industry. Storage was expensive, so enterprises only store the most critical data. And since it's such critical data, they have to be sure they don't lose it, so they have to have highly reliable, replicated storage systems, which made storage expensive, which is why they could only store a limited amount of data, so you can see the feedback loop. What happened with big data is somebody realized, wait, there's this massive amount of data, maybe it's clickstream data, maybe it's other user behavioral data, in massive amounts that I'm going to analyze statistically. It doesn't have the same value density as the older transactional data. If someone loses my airline reservation, I'm very upset. If someone loses that particular click and they're doing analysis of the efficiency of their advertising, it doesn't matter so much. So that's changed a lot of the behavior and scale. And the last factor, and this is really, I think, where OpenStack starts to play, as well as in the cloud, is the changing nature of the applications and the application architectures. Again, if you go back several years ago, we would build applications on top of very robust infrastructure with lots of high availability software, and then the application would be available. Today, we build the availability into the application with the assumption that the underlying infrastructure is more unreliable, perhaps, but certainly more fungible. So those are 4 very big factors. Now, in the US, we saw a massive shift, which I think in my career I've seen this happen many times. A new type of platform emerges. Everybody decides that's the answer. Let's put all of our applications in the new platform. As it starts to mature, 2 things happen. The existing applications was moved to the new platform. Some of them actually, it turns out, the old platform was more suitable, and they moved back. But new classes of applications emerge on the new platform because of its capabilities. Think of the transition from the mainframe to the mini computer, or the mini computer to distributed client server, to the web. Each case, we saw that, and we've seen that with the cloud. Just a few years ago, there was a view that said everything's going to move to the cloud. If you're a storage vendor selling storage, you're out of business. I don't believe that for 2 reasons. One is, I think that transition has partially occurred, and we're starting to see customers come back to their own private cloud or on-prem, and that's creating a lot of opportunity for massive amounts of data storage. And the other thing is that as we see the applications, new applications develop, people are taking what they've learned from the cloud and implementing it. So if you think about the cloud, the promise of the cloud is massive scalability, commoditization of the underlying hardware infrastructure, low cost, very efficient deployment, and very efficient management and operation. Now, why can't I do that in my own data center? Well, if I'm a large enough enterprise, I have scale. I get the benefit of the cost drivers of the hyperscalers. As they drive the industry to commoditize the hardware, I get the benefit. I could buy cheaper processors and storage and so on. The 2 challenges historically until recently have been I can't afford to build all the software infrastructure that an Amazon or an Azure or a Google has invested in order to operate my cloud. So I can't operate in that same cloud model. But OpenStack brings that back into the data center for the enterprise. And so OpenStack really becomes the liberator of this cloud architecture inside the enterprise. And what does that mean for us in the storage business? Well, in the same way that OpenStack and the software layers that allow one to build a cloud inside the data center in some ways abstract away the infrastructure, make it easier to manage, we've started realizing that the real value to customers isn't in storage. Storage is important, but it's really in data. And so we think about this in the following way. Today, we're all talking about digitalization, we're talking about the digital economy. Every business I talk to is figuring out how to digitize their business. And when you do that, the currency becomes the data. It's not the infrastructure, it's not the storage in your data center, it's the data itself, regardless of where that data lives. And so we've shifted our focus, expanded our focus from storage to data. And increasingly we think about how can we help our customers protect and manage all their data, whether it's on a NetApp system in their data center, in a public cloud, in a private cloud, or in a SaaS provider, software as a service provider. And so increasingly, as we think about our future, we're looking at how can we help with that problem by building the right software that can be deployed to manage data regardless of where it is through its life cycle. As a result of that, we've become focused also on being much more open. I think if you look at a company like ours a few years ago, you would have said, gee, are they really serious about being open? I think, in fact, one of the questions earlier specifically addressed that to NetApp. It said, is NetApp really serious about OpenStack? And I will tell you that last year we acquired a company called SolidFire, which is building a fantastic shared nothing scale-out storage architecture, very, very active in the OpenStack community. In fact, they're the #2 contributor to software in OpenStack. The reason they're #2 is because prior to the acquisition, NetApp was #1. And so now between the two of us, we're a very, very significant contributor to the storage aspects, Cinder and Manila, in the OpenStack software. And that's because of two things. One is this motivation to be able to help manage and protect data no matter where it resides. And the other one is we've embraced open in a very important way. As we think about extending beyond the NetApp system ecosystem, NetApp storage ecosystem, it's very important for us to be able to collaborate much more broadly. We started the day throwing wool and creating the wool network, and I think that's a good metaphor for what we have to do. We have to reach out and create a much richer network of partnerships, not only with our traditional partners, not only with our customers, but with developers inside other companies, developers that are independent, and the larger community around OpenStack to be able to improve the manageability and the protection of data in the cloud, in the private cloud, on-prem. And that's really our goal. So we've been working on this now for about 3 years. We're getting into our 3rd year. The vision of this idea to manage data, we call Data Fabric, started about 2.5 years ago. And initially, to be fair, it was focused on how do we manage data among the various NetApp storage systems. We quickly realized we had to extend that also beyond into the cloud. And in the last probably 12 months, 9 to 12 months, we've started focusing on how do we open this whole platform up, this Data Fabric, as a true platform so that others can extend it and build on it. And that's the thrust that we'll be talking about in a few weeks at our customer conference, and you'll be hearing more and more about over the next months as we invite all of you to participate in helping extend that and build a truly open framework for managing and protecting data. Moving data, analyzing data, where does my data sit? Is it in compliance? Is it secure? Critical questions that our enterprises need to understand. And in today's world, where the CIO may not even be in control of where apps are deployed, it's an even bigger problem for an enterprise to know where critical data is. Somebody in the HR department signed up for a SaaS service, and all of a sudden we have employee data in a location that no one anticipated. somebody in engineering found a cool new application that they've deployed on Amazon Web Services, and all of a sudden your engineering data is sitting in AWS. Someone in the finance department decided they found a cheaper way to process credit cards with yet another SaaS service. How do we even know that that data is in that location and protected? So these are critical issues that we're all facing, I think, as we create an open cloud environment. And OpenStack itself is helping with the management and the deployment of applications. We have to do something similar to help with this level of data management, data protection as we move forward. We have a lot of people here from NetApp. We've got a booth in the back, and I encourage you to talk to them. There are a couple of breakouts later today. I'll put that up here, where we have somebody talking about how to build a storage foundation for traditional and new workloads. And so this is the point I was making earlier. The first thing that we always do in our industry when we see a new platform is take a traditional workload that's already existing somewhere and move it. And that's very important. But what's ultimately the real value is finding new workloads or new approaches that the new platform enables that we never could do before. I was talking to a colleague the other day about this, and we were reminiscing to when we, maybe quite a while ago, most of you probably don't remember this, the first time we actually had a terminal-based as opposed to punch card, batch-based computing system where we were working. And we discovered that you could use email. Email in a punch card world doesn't make any sense. And so there was an example where we moved to a mini computer, terminal-based system. We moved our applications over. They worked better, cheaper, but they weren't fundamentally different. But then something entirely new emerged, email. And I think as we move to OpenStack, we're going to start, the real innovation is when we start to see new applications, new use cases, new opportunities that are enabled by the capabilities of this open, dynamic cloud environment. We then later have another talk that'll talk about OpenStack block storage, and I think that's going to focus a lot on our SolidFire systems, a unique system that provides essentially zero-touch, scale-out deployment for massive web-scale storage. Very interesting technology that can fit within the framework of an OpenStack environment. So I'm going to cut it short now so I can take some questions, and I thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Mark Bregman. Mark, what I was intrigued by your email comparison, what do you think, do you have any examples of things that are emerging now that we couldn't have imagined, let's say, 5 years ago? What is it then?
Well, I think we saw some examples in a couple of the slides this morning. The idea that one can sort of spin up and deploy literally thousands, hundreds of thousands of microservices on demand.
Yeah.
We could never do that before.
No.
I mean, imagine putting in a ticket and then waiting 6 weeks until somebody says, now I have a plan ready to deploy that app. Mm-hmm. That prevented us from doing a lot of very interesting things in the dynamics of business.
Yeah.
I think as we think about what that means in a world where hyper-connected, IoT, vastly higher velocity of business, we're going to be able to do things that we couldn't even imagine.
Yeah.
From the point of
Are
view
we
of
already starting to imagine that? Because what you're saying now is more of a technological point of view. You can launch so many apps in so many seconds. But can we, as a business, are there examples there as well?
I think so. Think about an example of, and it can be driven either by your own imagination or by a competitor.
Right.
You conceive of a new offering you want to put out in the marketplace. Rather than planning, designing, architecting, testing and deploying, maybe it's 12 months, you can get it out there in a matter of hours. Test it.
People are laughing.
They're laughing because of the question?
Yeah, I think so.
See.
Yeah.
So, well, I'll answer that in a minute.
All right.
But no, I think that's an example because, the ability for people to go out and try things. It's very interesting to me when you look at the pace of innovation. We often think small companies can move much faster. And one reason is they don't have anything to lose.
Right.
So if you and I start a company tomorrow and it fails, we go back to what we were doing yesterday. It
right,
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But if you're a big company, you tend to be more conservative. I think what we're finding with technologies like OpenStack and cloud and others is large companies can run these experiments very quickly.
Right.
And it kind of levels the playing field, gives them the opportunity to act like a very small, agile competitor.
But do we have the culture then?
That's a cultural question,
that's
absolutely.
A cultural
Good
problem.
question.
Peter Drucker. All right. Which one were they laughing about? Is it Ceph?
I think it must be Ceph, because that was the only one that was fully typed.
All right. So
I've heard
Could
of
you
Ceph.
answer that question?
I've heard of Ceph. I don't think it's a threat. I mean, Ceph is certainly becoming a very important part of the storage ecosystem. We're very active in using Ceph. Many of our large object stores are built with Ceph involved. Like anything else, it's a little bit like asking, I was at IBM years ago, and it was a little bit like, people would ask the question, well, is Linux a threat to IBM? And I think today nobody would say that. Because they embraced it, and we're embracing things like Ceph.
So is NetApp emerging towards a security-focused company? I like that one, because what you said is what nobody now in the business really thinks about. Where is my data? It's there, but that it has huge compliance implications.
Sure. So my prior life, I was at Symantec, a security company.
Right.
And one of the things that I think is really happening is that the way we think about security is shifting. I don't know if there's anyone here from Symantec. Hopefully not. I won't offend them much. Companies like Symantec were in the business of building locks. Keep you out.
Right.
I don't want you to come into my system.
Right.
That's one kind of security. It's very important.
Right.
And then there are other companies that build systems that are almost like alarm systems. Tell me if someone came into my system.
Yeah.
But the real problem is, I really don't care about that. What I really care about is, did anything happen to my data? And so there is a changing view of what security means. And I think from that perspective, we are moving in that direction. We're not going to become a traditional security company. You're not going to see, NetApp antivirus or NetApp intrusion detection. But you will see that our storage and our data systems have more capability to help people understand who's touching my data, is it in the right place, is something anomalous happening to it.
And
those are data related.
If we talk about business, whose responsibility is that then? Where the data is, are we compliant, et cetera? Is that top level, or is it down level? Everybody
I think it's
about
typically today a top level question. It's a question that gets asked by the board.
Right.
It's a question, all you have to do is look in the newspaper every day, and there's some company whose board is asking their CIO, I just read this article, is our data okay?
Yeah, right. Okay, so that's going to be a one. Can NetApp help me cycle faster? Is a good question from Heidi.
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. I think she doesn't mean like the data life cycle. She means actually cycling.
I think so, yeah.
I don't think there's any hope.
Oh, any help? You should do that yourself.
Heidi and I are cycling friends. So
really?
Yeah,
you're cycling friends?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
but she's not cycling enough.
If you work less, then you can train harder,
cycle faster.
and you can cycle faster.
That's a good point.
All right, Mark Bregman, thank you very much.